Hi there, my name is Marty Owings and today I'm going to make a sketchbook. These are the materials I'll use and everything here is listed in the description below. Today I'll be using a very basic and simple approach with a glued binding, so I won't need a typical bookbinding needle or thread in this case. These are the basic supplies I'm going to use. Some of them I had laying around and a couple of them I picked up. I'll start out here using good paper. This is 100% cotton paper. It's cold press and it's made by the Legion Paper Company. I'm marking out the measurements here so the pages are roughly 6 by 5 inches. That means I'll need to cut the pages to size from these 8.5 by 11 sheets. I'm not a bookbinding expert in any sense, and I've only made 2 sketchbooks previous to this one. I made those prototypes so I could try out some different bookmaking methods. So just to be very clear, I'm a complete amateur when it comes to handmade sketchbooks. I just wanted to see if I could easily and relatively inexpensively build my own sketchbook. After I get these sheets cut, I'll need to fold them and carefully add a crease to each sheet. I'll use a creasing tool, also known as a bookbinding folder. This will give the paper a precise, clean crease. I'm going to press firmly here, but not so firmly that I'm ripping the paper. And this tool really helps to give you that crisp edge on this paper. So, you're pressing nice and firm, but not too hard. I'm wearing the blue gloves a little bit here today in the early part of the bookmaking because I don't want to smudge the paper, and I've been working with pencil and glue all day, so didn't want to get the papers dirty. So I'll go ahead and fold and crease the rest of these pages. I think I ended up folding and creasing about 12 pages. So that'll give me plenty of room in my sketchbook and a nice base for the spine. Sweet. Next, I'm going to use this craft paper for part of my cover. This paper is thicker and more like cardstock. It'll add a little bit more rigidity and stability to the sketchbook I'm making. I cut this so it's a little larger than the pages inside. I also made sure to accommodate the size of the spine. Since this sketchbook will need a little room in the spine, I'm going to make some folds in this paper to accommodate that. More on that in a minute. I'm going to use this corner cutter to give my pages and the cover a more rounded look. This is definitely optional, and it's really up to you and the type of sketchbook you want to make or how you want it to look. Now I'm going to prep to be able to glue the binding here. So I'm going to clip these interior papers together, adjusting the clips until I have the relative width on the spine that I need. I don't want to be too compressed there because you have to let the glue into the pages a little bit. And I suppose you could get by with almost any type of glue if you wanted to, but in this case, I'm going to use glue specifically made for bookbinding. Because it remains flexible after drying, and that's important since I'm not stitch binding this book. So after you shake the glue pretty well, you're going to want to make sure you don't have any excess glue in the tip here, so just make sure you remove that. You don't want to get that in your binding. And then I'm going to apply the glue down the spine of the book here. Don't have to put on too much, but don't be afraid to, put on as much as you think you need. And then I'm going to use this hog's hair brush to spread that glue out evenly. I don't want it to be lumpy or to have bubbles in it or anything like that. So I'm going to carefully spread this glue along the spine with this hog's hair brush. And after I apply this coat, I'm actually going to let it dry solid for a couple hours. And then I'll apply 2 more coats. So a total of 3 coats of glue applied to the spine. Now I'll go back to the cover while I'm waiting for the spine glue to dry. And this is where I'm going to have to carefully crease the cover because I want to accommodate the inside papers here. So always use a straight edge here, which is my recommendation on my third sketchbook. What can I say? I'm not an expert again by any means, but these are tips I picked up and learned from people who do this or watching YouTube videos. So again, not an expert, but good tips. So I'm going to work this crease in firmly, but not enough to penetrate or pierce the paper. And you'll have a feel for it. This paper is pretty durable. You can press pretty hard, and after that, I get that crease worked in. I'm going to go ahead and run the tool along the outside edge to add that crispness to the edge here. Now you can see this is ready to go. I set the inside papers there and they fit pretty well. And what I have here is a linen fabric specifically made for, I think, for bookbinding. So this has a paper backing so that when you glue it down, the glue just doesn't come through the fabric. And then I'll use this, my cover, to kind of measure out how much of this fabric I need to cover this. And it accommodates for the spine and everything. So I'm just kind of drawing an outline around here. It's okay if you make it a little bit larger than it actually needs to be for the book, because you can always trim it down, and you'll see that in a little bit. And all I'm going to do here is go ahead and I'll round these corners just like they are for the rest of this sketchbook. Fits really nicely there. I'm going to go ahead and then apply some of that same adhesive, this bookbinding adhesive, to the back of this linen fabric cover, book cover. And then I'm just going to carefully and gently put that linen, glue that linen to the craft paper here. And you can see here it's going to have lumps and bumps. You're not going to be able to smooth that out perfectly. And I suppose you could use a roller on the glue so everything was perfect, but it's okay for me. This is homemade and it's not store-bought, so I kind of like that it has that feel. So just again setting the inside papers into the book cover to make sure they fit right. Here's where I'm going to go ahead and trim any excess fabric I had on the outside of the book. Now it's all nice and even even though it's got some of lumps and bumps that give away the fact that it's homemade, again, it's not perfect. Now what I want to do is I want to glue the front paper and back paper to the book. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the back paper here, spreading the adhesive out evenly on this page. And this is the part where you have to be a little bit careful about what you're doing. Make sure that you're evenly spaced on both sides of those spine creases that you set in the cover, and then glue that first page down, and then the front page, we'll go ahead and glue that down as well. And I just added a little glue in here for the spine, but it actually needs to flex a little bit, so I'm not sure that that wasn't a mistake. But it's okay, it worked out fine. You'll see in a minute, but I don't think it was necessary. So here, again, just gluing down that front piece to the book cover itself, and in a moment you'll see how that looks. So everything is stuck together now, and I need to let that glue dry, and I'll put the book under some weight. But before I do that, I want to glue a little bit of an accent paper or accent fabric to the edge of the spine. Now, not only is this kind of give it a retro look and it's a little bit decorative, it also has a practical purpose in that, it'll hold the book together if the spine wears out. I measured this end piece here just to make sure it fit nicely on the spine of the book. And as I said, it will also serve a practical purpose. So having this on the book is not only does it give it a little bit of a retro or retro feel, kind of a homemade book, but also, it does have a practical purpose. So it just adds another layer, I guess, of durability to the book. Don't know how long it'll hold up. I'm going to use it over the course of the next month or so here and see how well it does. But I enjoyed building that first part. Just to be extra cautious, I want to add some hinge tape between the front page and the back page there, and just for that added layer of durability. Now I'm not sure, how long it would hold up, or if you could take it everywhere. It's not stitched again. It's just the glued spine, and I'm going to show you a different method here in a minute. But it seemed to come out okay. I'm going to dry it, let it dry, and put it under some weight, and then I'll come back to it and we'll look at it at the end of the video. But don't expect it'll change much visually, but maybe it'll just let the glue settle in. Okay, so when I was making this sketchbook, I ended up with a lot of scrap papers because I had to cut out, about 8.5 by 11 sheets for it to fit. So these scrap papers, I don't want them to go to waste. So I'm going to make a little tiny sketchbook or booklet, whatever you want to call it, and I'm going to use hinge tape instead of gluing the spine. So what I'm doing here is I'm attaching hinge tape to each one of the interior pages of the sketchbook so that they bind together. So that's all that hinge tape is for, that just to keep those together. And with this scrap piece of craft paper, I'll use that for the cover. So I'm going to glue the back page and the front page to the cover just as I did with the larger sketchbook. And so just set that gently down in the book, making sure I'm even. And I'll use the tool there to spread the glue out evenly and make sure everything's attached firmly to the book. And with that, that's the majority of the work you have to do. Now I'm just working that glue in on the back side of the cover, but that's how it looks now that it's done. And that's all done with hinge tape, and that took less than a half hour to make that. Here I'm going to use just a little bit of that book fabric. It's linen there, and I'll glue it to the edge there just to have some consistency among the sketchbooks I've been doing. So yeah, I'll go just like that. Maybe it'll add a little something extra to that little book. A couple hours, it's dried. You can take a good close look at it, and it's ready to go. And I haven't wasted any paper, and it didn't take much to build this little sketchbook. So I kind of like the way this came out. I also rounded the corners on this one as well. So yeah, it didn't take long. It's not perfect, but it's kind of cool. I don't think I could buy this. So it's fun to make things and just have variations on those things that you would, normally wouldn't be able to find out there. It's kind of a bespoke thing you can do. So here's a look at 4 homemade sketchbooks I did. This is the book I made from scrap, and that one, I kind of like it because it's, like I said, it's pretty unique. This is the one we made today here in this video, and now that it's been under weight and had a chance to dry, it's pretty solid, and I like it a lot. It's fun to do this. I would say these books took me anywhere from 2 to 3 hours each. This is the second book I made. It's got some heavier paper in it. I decided to use like a 300 GSM paper in this. It's a watercolor paper, and although this has a glued spine, I also used some hinge tape there. And this is the first book I ever did. Now this has actual book cardboard cover on it. It's very heavy duty. I had a hard time cutting it. And this is all done with hinge tape and cardstock. And wasn't really going to sketch in this book. Instead, just mount some of my little small watercolors into this book, just a few of them. This is an idea I got from a friend of mine who builds his own sketchbooks as well. So that's a good look at 4 sketchbooks I built, and it's definitely a handmade feel to them. I would, guess if I was going to go try this again, I might try a stitch binding next time, or maybe I'll just make more of these. Well, thanks for stopping by today. This has been Marty for owingsart.com.